What's up, y'all? It's me, it's your boy Asmongold, and today we're over here in the Warlords of Draenor beta, and we're going to be talking about how Gladiator stance is shaping up, and pretty much what to expect out of it. Now, if you guys don't know, if you go to my level 100 talents, Gladiator's Resolve gives you Gladiator stance. Gladiator stance basically turns Prot into a DPS spec if you go into Battle stance, which is converted into Gladiator stance. And it makes you do more damage, and it gives you some other stuff that we'll talk about later. If you look on the 45 talents, as you guys will see here, I have Heavy Repercussions. That's now a talent, and it makes your shield slam do 50% more damage whenever you have shield block up. And shield block counts as shield charge, like it's the same thing apparently. That's what I'm hearing. And shield slam here. One thing that I also want to show you guys is that shield slam is now scales. The cooldown is lowered by haste, and so as you guys saw before, I had a 5.79 shield slam timer, and now I have a 5.51. Now, why that matters is that whenever the shield charge is like, what that is it's a lot like Colossus Smash, and whenever you have shield charge up, basically some of your attacks do more damage. I think it's your heroic strike, as you see there, 50,000 crit. That's a lot in Warlords of Draenor, and your shield slam does 20% more damage. Your Revenge does 20% more damage, and your Heroic Strike does 20% more damage. And so, basically, you want to fit all of those in together and pretty much spend all of your rage within that, and spend the rest of the time whenever you're outside of shield barrier, or it's not shield barrier, shield charge. You want to be building up rage for your next shield charge. And so it's kind of interesting because shield charge has two barriers, or sorry, not two barriers. It's very confusing. It has two charges, and so whenever you use it once, it recharges twice. It's the same way as like Deterrence works now, and same as Double Time works in terms of the charge mechanic. And as you guys will see, Gladiator stance it's really good. I think it's not quite as good as Fury. I think it might be a little bit better than Fury in terms of single target DPS, but I do not think it's as good as Fury in terms of AoE DPS. One thing that is good about Gladiator stance and AoE is that you can have deep wounds on everything, which kind of makes things a little bit easier. But right now, at this point, I'm not really sure how to maximize multi-target DPS, but I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Some changes that have occurred is that now Thunderclap costs rage, and so you don't really want to use it as like any sort of rotational damage ability or anything like that. And other than that, Devastate crits no longer. I think it was Devastate crits gave you a sword and board, and now that doesn't happen. It's just a 30% chance for it to occur. And so your real damage comes from within shield barrier. As I said before, it's like Warriors are now with Colossus Smash, where you pretty much want to pool rage and pool your hard-hitting abilities for Colossus Smash, and whenever it's up, you do as much damage as you can. Now, what you want to try and do inside this shield barrier thing is you want to use 2 shield slams, okay? You might get 3 if you get lucky procs, but that's probably not going to happen. The way you get 2 shield slams is as soon as you shield charge, you want to shield slam. So as soon as you get the buff, you shield slam, and then you have a small window for whenever it comes off cooldown to use it again if you have enough haste, because obviously it has a baseline 6-second cooldown, and so if you can have enough haste to give yourself at least like a 1.5 second window, that should be more than enough to kind of get it down. And it'll probably take you a few tries, but it's not really all that hard to do. Other than that, this is a pretty straightforward spec. You just kind of want to use like your regular tanking abilities. Honestly, like if you just play this the same way you play Prot, except for whenever you want to do damage, you just cast Shield Slam, or not Shield, jeez. Too many shields. Shield charge. And then you do as much damage as you can. And I like this spec. My concern with this is that shield, you have a lot of active defenses. You can use shield barrier. You can use last stand. You can use shield wall. You have a lot of different, very powerful defensive abilities that Arms and Fury does not have. And so either Gladiator spec is going to be better than the other two because they do equal damage, and this spec gives you more defensives, or Gladiator stance is going to be a spec that doesn't really do quite as much DPS, but it gives you more survivability. In my opinion, I think Gladiator stance will be very good in PvP. I don't really know about like high ranking arena or anything like that. I think it depends on the spec that you have. But I remember, and if you guys remember, in Wrath of the Lich King, end of Wrath of the Lich King, there was a lot of prot specs and things like that, like ATC, and so, or APC, I don't even remember which one it was. And so we might see a return of that. I don't really know. And as you guys will see here, I'm pretty much doing some multi-target rotational stuff. As I said before, one thing that's really good about this is that you can put deep wounds on everything, and it stays on there for 18 seconds. What sucks about that, though, is that Thunderclap has a rage cost now, and so you find yourself very rage starved. And obviously, you can also glyph Heroic Strike to give it a cleave component. And so it's, as I said, I'm not really sure exactly how all this is going to play out. I think Gladiator stance is going to be just godly for soloing, because you do have revenge, and obviously if you're fighting multiple mobs whenever you're soloing, you're going to be proccing revenge constantly. And also you have all that defensive stuff, and so I think Gladiator stance that's probably what it's going to be best at. And also whenever you get a multi-strike, which is kind of like a proc now, to where you can like hit 3 extra times or 2 extra times or something like that. What's the fucking ant? You start healing yourself through Blood Craze. You guys don't remember Blood Craze? It was a terrible talent back in Wrath of the Lich King that healed you for a very small amount of your health. But as you can see here, healing you for about 2,000. And I've got about, I don't know, like a little bit under 250,000 health. And so 2,000 isn't really a lot, but it happens every second. And also, the more that you have Blood Craze proc, it like stacks on top of each other. And so there's a lot of very good things that come out of multi-strike with warriors. And I honestly, it's kind of strange because there's a lot of symbiosis that's going on with a lot of the different, not really talent specs, but attributes that we get. Like now, multi-strike heals you, basically, and it makes you do more damage. And on top of that, haste, like you want haste, a little bit of haste, so you can go ahead and do more, use more defensive abilities ultimately. And so this is going to be, things are getting complicated, and I like that. I like complex things, and so I'm very happy with what's going on with Gladiator stance and all of that. And I think it'll be I think it's very interesting because it reminds me a lot of like Crusaders and Diablo 3, and one thing I really wish they would do, you guys probably already know what I'm going to say, is that I wish you could have a shield and a two-handed sword. Like that would be so fucking badass, and I really hope that like some point in the future they'll do that, because I have so many good transmog ideas for that. That would be so awesome. But anyway, that's not even happening, so we're not going to talk about that anymore. Anyway, as you guys can see, comparing this, because I also did a Fury Warrior guide, and I'll probably bring this one out after the Fury Warrior guide, and so you can compare it to the Fury Warrior DPS, and you'll see Fury does significantly more AoE DPS in my opinion, or at least it's what's showing up. I don't have recount, and so I can't really tell for sure, but I'm fairly certain that Fury does a lot more DPS, and so we'll kind of see what happens. But at the moment, Gladiator stance is extremely good for soloing. It does good DPS. It probably does better single target DPS than it does multi-target DPS. And that's pretty much all there is to it. It's also very durable. Very, very durable. And so, anyway, that's pretty much all I've got. So, thanks for watching, and like, comment, and subscribe.